exist. As the proverb says, tomorrow never comes. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now.
Welcome to the Philosophical Minds Podcast, the podcast about the stuff we wonder about.
And other things.
All right, we are here with Isreal Ruiz, or aka Raven, operative alchemist of Materia Artium Labs. How are you doing today, Raven?
I'm doing really good, man. How you feeling?
Not too bad. Just woke up from an eternal nap, I hear.
Yeah. My fiance she's practicing Reiki, and just maybe like an hour ago, after we had spoken to do the podcast, I was not sleepy. I was not tired. Like, I've been really energized all day lately. And she started her work, and I just blacked out. It's like, cool. Off to the nether realms, and here I am. She woke me up, just like, hey, don't you have a podcast to do? I'm like, oh yeah. Oh wait, where am I? Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't actually done a Reiki session, but I've always wanted to. It seems kind of intriguing. I don't know a whole lot about it, like the energy work stuff like that, but it sounds really cool.
Yeah, she's just gonna start it. I think she's gonna be great at it.
Definitely. So yeah, I've been like really loving your writing lately. You did like a little bit the other day on Enki, and kind of like was contemplating that notion of like the origins of mental programming, and you referred to it kind of like with the evolution of that and like where it's heading now. I mean, like the human being, it's kind of like the ultimate iteration of like programmable matter. And I think you said something called like the Nam Shab or something, was like a poem or incantation that Enki created. What was it? The Nam Shab? Is that what it was called?
The Nam Shab, yeah. It was. It's kind of like a spell, but I mean, you don't even have to use words. It's just basically like an intention that you set. And I mean, many of us have used Nam Shubs without even thinking about, that in that context or with that intention of it. And then when you mean something, it's coming from somewhere far deeper than you may even be aware of. Sometimes we may do it in fear. It's usually when we're in like connected to a very intense or deep state of emotion. And emotion is part of it, because emotion, electrical conductivity that gives motion to something, right? It just pushes further into manifestation something that you are intending. And this is one of the premises of magic, is you use your emotion as a tool rather than something that you succumb to every single day based on ideas of words like happiness, sadness, anxiety, fear, and etc. And so behind him, the Nam Shub is that power that you have, that we always throw around constantly. I mean, we do it when we just speak, and I mean, there was a time where we didn't speak, not with words, but speech wasn't originally intended as a form of communication, because we already communicated with each other, because the idea of communication from one place to another wasn't a thing. It's the idea of telepathy. We were already there, so there was no conversation being had, right? But back to the thing with Enki, it's connected to the story of the Tower of Babylon, that all humans spoke one language at one point. You can say that if we spoke one language, then perhaps we were all telepathically connected at that time. But Enki is, you can say he's the archetype of like Hermes, Mercury, the trickster. He's mischievous, and he's the god of communication, language, spells, magic, and just because he can, for no purpose other than to do it, to see like if something is working out, everything's fine per se. You just step in there and just sprinkle a little chaos just to fuck with everyone, because you know it's always going to work its way through. It's always going to work out somehow, and which is where we're at right now. So when he made his Namsha, basically he severed that line of communication that we all had amongst each other and with ourselves, and just distorted data and distorted the frequency of intelligence being able to communicate with itself, which sounds kind of fucked up, but it's kind of awesome at the same time, because you know it's all you, right? Like Enki knows that it's all him, or Mercury or Hermes knows that it's all
definitely kind of
one
embodies
thing.
it.
It's like, well, so might as well just, yeah. And you know this, right? Like you don't have to be worried, like, oh no, but like what if they never figure it out? What if they get lost? And it's like, that's the whole fucking point. Let them get lost, let them get confused, let them, because in that confusion, right? Like we can't communicate now. If we can't communicate, I mean, there's got to be an intense sense of fear, and discomfort going on. But in all fear and all discomfort comes great revelations and growth, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually, So
Yeah,
I want to say that perhaps Enki already knew that this was going to create a very, very interesting story for the masses and for him to watch. I mean, if you're a god, right, and you know all of it, I mean, I would get bored. I'm like, I'm just going to fuck with these guys and just throw the monkey wrenches to the gears and just watch them figure it out.
It's definitely art, like that representation of that like trickster aspect for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the trickery is always the end. That at the end, it's everyone wins. That's the thing. You always win. Like you always come out. It's like setting the phoenix on fire, and then it's like, oh no, the phoenix is dying. What have you done? And it just rises. Like, oh, so that's it. It's cool. It's like, yeah, but yeah. Back to the Namshub though. Yeah, you could think of it as a seal, as a spell, a poem, an incantation. And usually these things are more powerful when we're not using words, because from my experience, our language is very manipulated. So it's very manipulating, and we don't understand the thing that we're using all the time. Like we never understand the thing that we use all the time, and our words have meanings that go deeper than etymology, and our words come from somewhere. And language, I don't know what the term is, but basically, like in Spanish, Italian, French, like you have the root in Latin. So I speak fluent Spanish, but I understand when people speak to me in French, not, perfectly, but I also understand when people speak to me in Italian. Like I get what they're saying. And it's almost because I'm tethered to the root of what they're saying. So I don't need the extra words at all. They actually get in the way. And it's interesting because nowadays, I mean, for a very long time, I would say since Enki released that first Namshub on the planet, we haven't clearly articulated what it is that we want to say. And the reason for that is not just because of that Namshub, but also when you feel something and you want to express it, your mind always gets it gets involved, and you start to think about what you're feeling. That's where we start to, I say this lightly, but that's where we fuck up. You're not saying what you actually mean. So I've sat with people on psychedelics and I've shown them, like, we don't have to speak, and they get all confused, and then we're having a conversation, and then maybe 20, 30 minutes into it, I just look at them and I say, have you noticed that we haven't moved our lips at all? Like, what the fuck? It's like, yeah, Like you're actually communicating for the first time in your life what you actually mean. And you don't have to have your mind involved in it whatsoever. So some people think that it is a way to keep humanity down. Maybe, maybe not. But even if it were, we still have access to the truth. We still have access to authenticity. So we still have access to spell breakers, because you're casting spells when you write, you're casting spells when you speak. It's really important to keep note of that. And with something powerful like a Namshub, you know, Enki did this, but he didn't do it because he wanted something. That's the trickster part. It has no intention of desire or wanting or needing, right? It's already whole, so it's complete. So that circuit doesn't need to merge or interact with any other circuits in order to retain or gain energy, you know, or to exist or anything like that. It just is, right? And so whether it was like, I don't think that it was a shitty intention on behalf of that thing towards humanity, but what I perfectly understand the trickster archetype, and I can see why it is really fucking funny when things look quote unquote perfect, you know. And if it was perfect and you couldn't fuck with it, right? It's like, I guess you can, right?
That's interesting. It kind of makes me think like speech is like possibly in sort of an adaptation on behalf of humanity to kind of like attempt to get us back to that communication, since it's kind of like been discombobulated in that sense. And then so in the Namshab, it's kind of synonymous with like a sort of intention backed by a kind of like a potent emotional willing. Is that fair? Sort of?
Yeah.
And then okay. Yeah, and speaking of like spells and whatnot, I try to like kind of stay aware and privy to the latest in the realms of psychological warfare, and it's fucking nuts. Like I've been following like the work of this chick named Alison McDowell lately, and I stumbled across some stuff, and you know, there's what's called the Center for the Future of War, operating out of ASU. Unfortunately, it's close proximity to me, but it's funded by Eric Schmidt, of course. And yeah, it's kind of crazy shit because they're doing it in the name of like biosecurity, and they're doing like neuro, kind of like what they're calling neuro weapons. So yeah, ASU, I guess it was awarded a grant by Minerva, and so yeah, there's this United States Army like training doctrine command clip thing from like 5 years ago that I was watching. One of their, it's called the Mad Scientist Divisions, and I don't know, I don't know if it was the head guy of the division or what, but it was like the representative dude that was like speaking about it, and I forgot his name, but he was talking about the projects that they have going on at the Minerva Institute or Minerva Research Initiative, or whatever, but out of the Department of Defense. And it had to do with functional magnetic imaging outcomes of heat messages going into humans so that they could determine whether or not humans responded differently by monitoring their brain functionality. And they've apparently done this and more, because he went on to say that they found that hate messages going into humans trigger an antecedent, like ancient evolutionary biological messaging signal. And then he continued to say that they have the means to send out this messaging signal and communicate it at scale and yada yada. But yeah. Moral of the story is, it seems like shit's kind of about to get crazy. I'm wondering from your perspective, what's your take on all that?
Man. So from very, very intimate personal experiences, first of all, and just always be aware of this, that when the public is now aware of something, if they let us know about something, they've been working on this for a very long time. And it's just gone public because at the meta level of the game, right? So not the human players on the chessboard, but the hands that guide the pieces on the chessboard. You know what I mean? These beings, how do I explain this? One of the rules to this reality is you could do whatever the fuck you want here. There is no good or evil. There is no right or wrong. That's the core of this reality is it's at your will, right? And when you think about the game from the perspective of like the hobbits or the humans, it seems very unfair and stuff. But there's bigger games that are at play, and one of the players is the military industrial complex, right? And these guys, well, I won't get into that, but they've been in this game for a very long time. I mean, they've been here since ancient times. You know, if you think about war, you think about Mars, you think about soldiers and armament and weaponry and stuff. Like, they've been here. There's the game that they play. These are the guys that are operating with other beings that are either extraterrestrial or extra dimensional. And, you know, because those motherfuckers get to play here too. That's the really crazy part. But these guys always operate around this frequency of everything is very sus. Like, everything is very suspect. Like, they're just paranoid about everything. At the meta level, they're watching their own backs. They're weird about everybody and everything, right? Because there's such megalithic games being played. And one of the things is part of this like weird ethereal paranoia that they have is watching their backs and trying to get ahead of the other team. So it's not so much to build the bigger weapons, have the biggest ammo or anything like that. There's extra sensory stuff going on, right? You can call it magic. The psychic ability stuff, right? I mean, take for example, Area 51. So Area 51 is there's a magical frequency placed on that military facility, but it's a distraction, right? Because what we think is there is actually spread around underground bases in the United States, right? But that place is guarded. But it's guarded in such a crazy fucking way, Sky. Like, it's not, I'm not talking about like you can't just show up in your car and like, hey, can I come in? It's guarded in a way where if you, and I don't advise anybody who can do this stuff to do it because it's not good. You can try to remote view that place, and they have humans and non-humans protecting that place. So it's almost like a antivirus system in your computer. It is aware that you are trying to go in there remote viewing whatever's going on, right? So they have these beings that are also remote. They're doing the same thing, but as a defense measure. So if you were to take your mind, your consciousness, ground yourself wherever you're sitting, like in your basement, and you go to remote view this location, and you know, we got GPS, we got Google Maps, you can find coordinates, you can look at pictures of the place, and you can put yourself there. They can trap you and like really fuck you up. Like, you know, you're not your human body, right? There's something in the human brain, perhaps the pineal gland, that is a radio receiver for consciousness to be in it. And it can distort that. It can actually remove your consciousness from your body. It can actually like trap the computer system that is pretending to be Sky in a place. And I don't know much details about what happens afterwards. I do know that some people don't come back. Like, you go to the apartment and you go to that basement and you just find somebody comatose or unconscious. And but yeah, so I say that, I don't know if it makes sense, but this is the kind of stuff that our government is either doing or funding, because other countries are doing things like that too. I mean, like Russia is really ahead of us when it comes to these kind of things. But and you know, the military industrial complex does not want to be behind anyone. You know, the United States wants to have the biggest dick, right? The biggest nuclear arsenal, right? But even that stuff is just small fry compared to the things that we actually have, the types of technologies that we have. I mean, the CIA, I don't know if you saw this report, they just released a report, I think it was this year or last year, maybe like right after the whole COVID thing started happening. They released files that they've been doing work and funding projects on remote viewing, on time travel, or time jumping technology, and working with non-terrestrial and extraterrestrial and interdimensional beings in order to reverse engineer technology that they've come across, and B, also work with other entities, but they make contracts, you know what I mean, to do these things. But so I'm not surprised. I mean, it is fascinating what you're sharing with me about the Minerva Research Institute, but I'm also not surprised. I think it's just really cool that it's happening right now rather than like a CIA declassified file from, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that this shit is happening right now. And it's really interesting because I've been actually showing Christine, how do I explain this? And they're basically energetic tools, energy tools. So you're using copper or different types of metals. You're using crystals. You can use different types of crystals, and your body is the conduit of it all, right? So you are this receiver and the amplifier of these things, and using these technologies will amplify you further, right? So imagine, you know, the traditional wooden magical wand, but you're really working with technology, earth technology, or earth resources like metals that can conduct bioelectrical energy far, far faster and far more refined than, you know, a piece of magical wood per se. But you can, you know, if you think about time and space are being generated by the mind, right? But if you don't know this, that doesn't mean that you're not part of the game. You're still in it. You're just you're part of a story when you don't know about it. When you begin to learn about it, you start to diverge from that story into a new one. If you go deeper, you can manipulate time and space. You know, the idea that nothing is physical, right? Everything is just a series of frequencies in space and time that you're imagining as something solid. You can make things become liquid, right? Gravity doesn't actually exist. So this is like, you know, ancient Egyptian, not technology, but techniques of utilizing earth resources to take a giant, you know, 30-ton boulder, you point something at it. Whatever it is that you're pointing at it, you don't need a battery, right? There doesn't have to be wires or cells or anything involved. You can just point it at the 30-ton boulder, and your intention, because you are the operator, right? These tools have no power unless you give them power. So that's the idea about all these trinkets that are starting to show up right now. And I've had people show up in my life talking about it too recently. Like, yeah, there's some crazy shit happening right now as you speak. It's it's like sci-fi, but it's not, because we've done this already. We're just doing that shit right now. And it's not that it needs to happen, it's just happening. This is just what happens when you push something into a corner for so long. and you take away its power. Quote, you're not taking away its power, right? But you make it feel powerless, right? It feels fear, it gets sick, it dies, all these things are happening when you push something like that into a corner for and when I say so long, I mean, I'm talking about before Enki's Nam Shub, right? Like this is way before that, right? Before the governments, money, schools, education systems, these were all part of complex, intricate systems that were created to keep pushing us into a corner. So you can say that, based on what I'm saying, you could look at it from the old way, which is, oh no, they're fucking with us, right? We're poor humans. Or that what we thought was our enemies are actually our friends, pushing us further into our evolution. And that's exactly what's happening right now. We're starting to, maybe not in the from the masses perspective, but you don't need the whole world to be in cahoots with something, right? Like the Bible says, there will only be 144,000 that will go to heaven. That's a crazy number, because how many people exist on Earth? I don't know. The numbers change, but there's billions of people on the planet, right? Billions. And only 144,000 are going to heaven. That's a different conversation about heaven, but it just goes to show you, it's like, oh, we don't need the whole planet to be, coherent and in cahoots with this. Like, no, not at all. You just have to be coherent and in cahoots with it. This is just what evolution looks like. And either you're with it or you're not. If you're not, that's cool, because your energy or whatever is just recycled back into the system. And if you're with it, well, then you're gonna see a story that you've never fucking heard of before. We have little hints through historical, or what we're allowed to know from historical data, but it's happening right now.
Damn,
And
that's
we're coming
fucking wild.
to a time where there's no more kings, dude. Like there's no more leaders, and it's falling apart. Everyone came here with the potential of becoming the king itself in your world, because you're living your world, right? Not my world, not the US government's world, not Gandhi or Jesus's world or anything like that. You're living your own world. You didn't come here to be a servant, but we've been servants, right? You didn't come here to do as you were told, but we do that, and a lot of the things, like the thing that I'm holding right now is a technology that is, it's substituting what we used to be able to do. You're where you're at, I'm where I'm at, and we can call each other and have a conversation right now as if we were right in front of each other. Well, you could also drop some LSD. We can drop it at the same time, send each other text like, you ready? Go. And we can have the same fucking conversation without a phone or a camera or a mic or anything like that. But right now, everything that we have is either pushing us to shake off the bullshit, right? Because if you push something far enough, it's either gonna it's gonna give up and die, keel over, or it's gonna fight. But I like this other one that no one talks about, which is the one that doesn't choose to fight. It chooses to continue to roll with the punches, right? Get stronger. Like to be a good fighter, it's not just how hard you can hit someone, it's how hard you can take a hit. And that's being shown right now. Like we've been jackasses as a species for so long, and it's starting to happen. Like we're waking up to ourselves, though. Everyone would like to have the comforting story of we're waking up to the evil in the world. It's like, no, motherfucker, we're waking up to ourselves right now. And everything that's happening is pushing us towards self-realization. And we need that because, we're leaving Earth. That's part of the game. So before we leave this planet, though, there's some foundational groundwork that we need to do. And there's the great revelation, biblical shit is happening right now. It's going to look a lot cooler and sound a lot cooler than the Bible, It's not going to be like a literal 7-headed dragon with 7 crowns fucking shit up. They're all metaphors, right? But if those things are happening, which they are, then we have to have some sort of preparedness, right? So it's pretty cool that something like the Minerva Research Institute is doing what they're doing. But what does that mean for us?
Wow. That's fucking crazy. So, and these particular like items that you were speaking about, were these like specific metals or minerals, or is it like a technological creation or like a native earthly material substance that you were kind of?
It's both. Yeah, it's both. I mean, if you think about it, right? Like everything that we create, even if we call it artificial, it's still from Earth, right?
True. Right.
Like plastic didn't come from Pluto. You know what I mean? Plastic came from materials from here, and we made plastic, right? So it's not foreign. It's not alien. And so anyways, but this technology is like I made this one thing, and basically it's just a copper pipe, 12 inches, just the basic girth of about an inch diameter copper pipe, and you find a crystal point that's clear. So you want something that's sharp, clear, has nothing inside of it, no inclusions or anything that get in the way. So you cut the end of they call it power, you could call it like a power rod. So you cut the end of it, you do like a cross section, you open it up a bit, you fit your crystal in there. And what I did was I used leather, and like I wet the leather, I wrapped it around the entire rod, but at the other end, I just got a copper cap. I put that in there, just a little bit of glue, and you wrap it in leather as a good ground. And so now that you have this tool, you have to build a relationship with it. And the reason you build a relationship with it, because it's not just like point and click, is because this has now become an extension of yourself. Just like when you're driving a car or you're typing something on a keyboard, everything that man makes is just an extension of itself. That's it. Everything that we do, right? I mean, you take a keyboard, you have a song in your head, you take that song in your head, and you transmit that frequency, that energy, that electricity down with your neural center, your nervous system, down to your neurons, all the way to your fingertips, and you play that song. And then you record it on your computer, and then you play it back. So you know what I mean? The computer, the keyboard, they're all extensions of you to manifest something that's, some sort of creativity, some sort of intention or agenda. So you build a relationship with this thing, just like you learn how to use a computer, right? You never use a computer, and you get your first computer, you've never touched one, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And it's really good to enter these technologies with the same idea, because they seem very simple, and they are, but they're very complex, only because you're very complex. You're so complex that it's like you still don't even know who you are. And you've been around for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years on this planet. It's like, that's how complex of a being that we are. We don't even know ourselves. So sitting with this power rod, you meditate with it, you hold it. I've been using psychedelics as a means to accelerate or hyper accelerate things that I'm doing. So you can take this thing, this power rod, and sit with it, meditate. Just sit with it, right? Feel it. Close your eyes, sit there, lotus, whatever, and just feel it. Like a blind person constructing an image of their physical reality or the thing that they're encountering. Create a picture in your mind by touching it. So don't look at it and just see the same image when you close your eyes, but actually envision, like recreate what you're sensing, not what you're seeing, because our eyes lie to us, right? And in that process, you'll begin to maybe see a different color of it. Maybe it has a glow or an afterglow. You know, maybe it's blue, maybe it's orange or whatever. And you set your intention. So this goes back to Atlantean technology. That's where it's coming from. And the operator can use this to either heal or to destroy. And it's cool to know both things, because the idea is that if you're a shaman, you're considered a healer, right? But a true healer needs to also know how to be a warrior, because warriors kill and destroy things. So you can use this power rod to point it at someone that has a broken femur, and you point it at it. And the reason you build this relationship with the power rod is because it's like growing a new appendage out of your body, which is the power rod. You can point at it and you see the bone healed. So you don't see that the bone is healing, because that states that it is broken. And you're confusing reality, right? Broken, healed, I don't understand. So nothing happens. That's why most of the things that we want to do don't work, because we're trying to say, I feel better. Well, that means that you were feeling bad, and the universe only understands yes and go. It's like input, output, right? It's positive, negative. It's basic electrical circuitry, right? Circuits don't understand maybe, or I have this idea. It's like yes or no, yes and go. That's it, right? So you point it at the broken femur, and then the broken femur painfully comes back together again.
That's
because it was
badass.
never
Yeah.
broken.
That's like
But at the same time, huh?
Oh, sorry, go ahead. I cut you off, my bad.
Oh, so that's like the healing part. But the destruction part is necessary, because if there was a virus inside someone, like a disease, well, you don't want to heal the disease, right? You actually want to kill it. You want to destroy it. So you need to be able to play around with both. So you always want to be neutral. You always want to be in a gray, not white or black or light or dark. But you were saying something?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like effective prayer versus like, can I please have da da da? It's kind of like that mental state of like,
Yeah,
when
that's
you're
exactly
asking like,
it.
can I please have, you're acknowledging the lack thereof, and you're focusing that energy, and thus creating that kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy. But yeah, I love that. So, and then I had a question when you were kind of talking about that. Is there a differentiation between sorcery and shamanism, or would you say that they go hand in hand? Or so what do you think about that?
They go hand in hand. So I always fuck with people with this. I tell people that the serial killer and the shaman are both playing the same game. They're both playing the exact same game. How we perceive it, though, is up to us, right? As the perceived other, as the viewer, the audience. But they're free. That's the thing. They're free. So they're free to do what thou wilt, to quote the great Crowley, right? But like, do what thou will, but own that shit. You know what I mean? And now, I don't have anything against either, but one has an agenda for the other, and the other has an agenda for itself, which there's nothing wrong. I think, again, finding the neutral sweet spot between the two is definitely more useful than trying to choose a side, you know? But the sorcerer is, let's say, like, sorcerer commands nature, right? I command the forces of wind to blow my windmill, and the wind does it, you know? And that's cool. It works. There's nothing wrong with that. But something like a shaman or a wizard would ask, like, hey, so I know you're alive, I know you're conscious, wind, air. If you have some time today, I know you haven't been around for all season. If you could just like help blow my windmill so I can turn this thing, so I can churn grains or whatever, that would be awesome. And it happens anyway, you know? So you're still getting the same thing that happened. Like you'll get the same outcome. It's just, how did you do it? So it's up to you. I mean, sometimes you might have to command something, you know? It's like, I can ask a friend to do something for me. And, you know, said friend may or may not do it. It's whatever. But let's say we're in an emergency situation. I've been in these situations before with friends. Everyone's freaking out. It's chaos, right? And so I'm not in a position to ask anything of anyone. I literally have to like get very cold. So no emotion, no please, excuse me, and thank you, right? No politeness, no morals anymore. This person is dying. This person is hurt. I need you to go do that now. I need you to go fetch water down there now. I need you to go, rip up shirts, make a bandage now. And everyone understands it and shit gets done, right? So it's like knowing when to use either side.
Definitely.
The shaman and the sorcerer and wizard, they're all playing the same game. I just think that when you identify as a thing, then you have excluded other things. So maybe when the wizard doesn't have time to ask and needs something to happen right now for the sake of something else, it may not happen because that wizard or shaman doesn't operate from that state, and the other way around.
It's fascinating. I wanted to touch back on that, the kind of like Anunnaki or like the Enki related things. I'm wondering, do you have any insight into like these ancient tablet depictions where you see them like holding like a pine cone or holding like a bag in their hand? Do you have any insight or thoughts as to the symbolism of that or what that is depicting?
I don't know about the bag. I've questioned that too, but I know the pine cone. Before I knew about the pine cone, it showed up on on a lot of LSD. It was being extrapolated out of my head, and it was put in front of me. And it was like, you ever seen a pine cone still in a tree when it's still closed?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So it was like pulled out and it was closed, and it was just being spun around in every direction, but in one point, it was being shown to me. And then the thing that was showing it to me, like, grabbed my chin and made me look at it. I look at its eyes, and then they put the pine cone between his forehead and my forehead, and then it was looking like looking at a time-lapse video of a pine cone opening when it falls. But very quickly, it was just like little pieces were opening. When it finally opened up, it was shoved right back in my head, and I fell back. And then I was aware of a reality that already exists here with ours, that we can't see unless we have our third eye open. Usually it's people that, are like psychics or mediums or something, or they're indigo children, or they're schizophrenic or shamans, or you take an entheogen that opens it up for that moment in time, right? So you're tripping for 6 hours, your third eye is open for 6 hours, and you see the spirit realm or the realm of the dead, or what I see it, I know it as the realm of operators, or that are pretending to be humans, where they're actually located, which is still here. And yeah, so it was being shown to me that the pineal gland or the pine cone, and the fact that we call it pineal gland as well, is the seat, soul. It's when you look into someone's eyes, they say that the eyes are the windows to the soul. And if you want to know who someone truly is, you look at their eyes. Not at the eyes, like the eye color, the shape, or anything like that. You look inside. And when you look inside, you are interacting with this window that's peering through something sitting in the pineal gland, which is where DMT is located, by the way. It's what produces DMT for us every single night when we go to sleep, which is what brings us into the dream realms. You're tripping when you sleep. That's why you dream. And so from what I've learned from my personal experience is that the symbol is just showing you, and it's not just the Sumerians, right? That image has been all over the place. Even my not so favorite people in the Vatican, the Pope has a freaking staff that has the pineal gland on it. There's a courtyard in the Vatican there's a water fountain, a massive one with a giant pine cone on it. But these are little like Easter eggs for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, which is open your third eye and you'll know. And that's what they always left behind. It's like scriptures and stories and scrolls and epics on pottery and stuff, and that's cool. But they're always showing you this image of the pineal gland as being represented by the pine cone. And it's interesting too, because the Sumerians really show a lot of that imagery, actually.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think I've heard Rogan mention about that, the symbolism like in the Vatican at one point. And that's cool that you kind of talked about like the pineal gland as the seat of the soul, and then kind of that connection with DMT or the spirit molecule, and how that spirit molecule's association with the seat of the soul, like the spirit and the soul. So yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. But yeah, so that's really cool. One thing I wanted to get you to maybe go over is, this is something that you had ranted about a little bit at one point, and I thought it was just really interesting how you went through kind of like the evolution of the noble metals from kind of like lead to gold. And I wanted to know if you could maybe like kind of break down and go through that process of how they kind of one goes into the other and so on.
Yeah. So in alchemy, the understanding is that everything comes from metals, right? This could be like a different podcast, or it's probably going to be in the courses that I do soon. But
nice.
When a star, right before a star becomes a star, there's this whole array of gases and metals floating around. And something's going on that's pulling these things together. And when these things start to compile on top of each other and like smash into each other, imagine like a particle accelerator, right? Like the Higgs. Energy starts to congeal, compress, but it also wants to expand, right? But things are busy smashing into some sort of center of something. But there's metals in there. But physical reality is not what we think it is. Things are much smaller, right? You can think of like particles, atoms. I mean, there's other things that we still haven't discovered. Science hasn't discovered yet, but these things are all in there, expanding, contracting. It's like breathing in and out profusely. Mind you, it's massive, right? It's bigger than it's bigger than Earth, it's bigger than our solar system, but all this stuff is just happening. And then the star is born, and like the metals that are on Earth came from the sun, and the sun is still affecting the evolution of these things on the planet. So it's kind of like, imagine, radiation that comes out of the sun is affecting the formation of things on Earth. It's kind of like when you're cooking, right? Every ingredient that you put into this thing is altering the thing that originally was, right? So you could take a chicken, like a whole chicken, plucked, dump it in water, boil it, eat a piece of that chicken, and that's what you just experienced, right? Then if you add salt, you have a different experience. But then if you add rosemary, maybe you add some olive oil and you add some acid, and you start to play around with the heat, you can make so many recipes out of this one chicken, right? Essentially, it's the same thing that's happening with the sun and what it's doing. And it's not just the sun, though. The planets are emitting stuff that are affecting things on the planet as well. And not just, quote unquote, energetically, but physically, like literally is affecting the things that are happening on this planet, right? That's why, when Mercury goes retrograde, or Gatorade, as I like to say, it's communications do get all fucked up, right? But it's not the planet or the entity or the god knows it and known as Mercury that's fucking with shit. It's just what happens, right? Carl Jung actually made this interesting analogy. He said when two people, which are chemical bodies, come together in a flask, either you get a reaction which causes a change or nothing happens, right? So everything is composed of its own unique recipe of chemicals and energies. And when they interact with another, something happens. So like for me, when people show up in my life, the interaction that usually happens is that, they start to go through a death experience. That's just a chemical reaction, right? That's happening. Or like you ever just are in the same room with someone you've never met, all of a sudden you just feel really good around them, or you're just annoyed, like everything starts to bother you and shit. It's the same idea, right? So the sun is doing that. So it's doing that to the metals that are on this planet. And in alchemy, everything comes from metals. So metals interact with other chemicals, other things in their environment, and they can become states of the metal, right? So you can take copper metal and put it in hydrochloric acid, and what you get is this crystal formation called copper chloride, which is the chloride part of the hydrochloric acid. Hydrogen gets released and a conversion happens, a catalytic conversion happens, and copper then becomes a mineral called copper chloride, or you could do it with acetic acid, which is vinegar, which happens naturally in nature. It can become copper acetate, So yeah, when all these metals are here on the planet, and they're all in different states of their life, right? So, but when you just think of the journey of a metal itself, without all the other stories that are part of it, because it gets complex or intricate. So the idea is that psycho-spiritually and physically, everything starts off as lead. And this is like, if you were to take lead in a controlled environment so you can see the process happen, it's really hard to see lead go through these processes in nature, because in nature, lead is also interacting or being distracted by other things, right? You're sitting at a coffee shop on your laptop trying to get this like writing done, and then someone sits next to you and is like super fucking loud on their phone. Or or they're having this conversation with someone in person or on the phone or whatever that just has your attention. You're like, oh shit. So let's say like you're led and your goal was to get this writing done, but then all of a sudden you're like wrapped up in someone else's conversation about DMT and the mechanical gnomes and elves, and you're like, oh shit. So all of a sudden you led, who had this agenda of going on this path, just got distracted to this other path. So it's really hard to see the processes in nature, but you bring them into the laboratory so that you can it's a controlled environment, right? So what the ancients have noticed over time is that, yeah, everything is starting off with lead, which is where we start off our psycho-spiritual journey, you know, and we're very rigid to our ways of understanding because we think we know what we know, and what we know is what we know and what it is, so on. And lead then starts to change, transform into its next state. That's why we have all these myths about these gods. You know, lead is Saturn or Kronos, and you know, lead eats his children and devours all the children that he has with all these other gods and whatever. But then he has this one son named Jupiter, who his mother hides somewhere so that he doesn't get devoured by Saturn. And Jupiter is now the offspring of Saturn, Tin, right? Zeus. And Zeus is the one that overpowers Saturn. Because you got to move forward, right? If everything is just lead, nothing happens. We're all just like a bunch of constricted, self-imploding, boundary-ridden curmudgeons. You know, we're just cold and bleak, and we're just like, no, nothing matters. Blah blah blah. It's like very kind of Rick Sanchez. But then with Jupiter, Saturn opens up and begins to be more exploratory, begins to be more playful, more, I want to expand. I want to branch out. I want to go see the world. It's usually like the thing that starts to trigger the hero's journey, right? It's like, I'm bored of this shit. What are you bored of? The same Saturn shit. Like, I'm bored of it. I just want to see something. I want to see the world. That's the Jupiter thing, which is very youthful, very jovial, right? Very playful. And wants to explore. It's the one that wants to go and fuck and do drugs and party and dance and just eat and get fat and get diabetes and all this stuff. It's Jupiter, right? But it can't stay there because we already know where that goes too. So I don't know if it's I'm like painting a good picture of this. You start to go from Saturn all the way up to the, you know, all the way through the metals. Understanding archetypes is really important because then you can begin your journey of mastering correspondence. Because then when you know, in correspondences, you know what the archetypes are, you know what the gods are, you know what the metals are, you know what the archetypes are. And then you can see how they interact with each other and what that looks like, what that feels like, what that sounds like, what it tastes like, right? Again, back to the chicken analogy, when you start to use different ingredients, what happens, right? You can use salt, rosemary, and lemon. The amount of each and how you vary, like the variance of each by weights, you'll create different dishes, even though you're still using those 3 ingredients. But it's not just 3, right? We have 7 ingredients. What does Saturn look like when it interacts with Tin, with Jupiter? What does Saturn look like when it interacts with Venus? What does Saturn look like when it interacts with Jupiter and Venus? Do you see what I'm saying? Then it's like, what does the sun look like when it interacts with the moon? What does the sun look like when it interacts with Saturn? So yeah, it's like Saturn has to implement itself into all the planets. Then Jupiter has to do the same thing, right? And then Mars has to do the same thing. And then Venus has to do the same thing. And the moon and this, like, everyone has to do the same thing. But then Jupiter has to instill himself into Saturn, into Venus, into Mars, into Mercury, right? And then Mercury has to do the same. So it's intricate. But anyway, so once you understand that, you begin to build a picture or story of correspondence. How do things correspond to each other? Because then you can go into the next journey, which is how do things relate? And again, you are all 7 planets, right? You're every archetype, or you have every archetype. You're not the archetypes, but you have them inside of you. It's how you exist. It's how you perform. Everything comes from the archetypes, just like everything on Earth comes from the metals. So lead, and science knows this too, lead is on its, well, not all science, but lead is on its way moving up to tin, and that's why tin looks very similar to lead. But, there's properties and attributes to tin that lead didn't have. For example, lead is a terrible electroconductor. And lead is not used for acoustics. Acoustic sound, like vibrations, don't flow through lead easily. But it is used to block radiation. It is used to block sound, But tin becomes a little better of a electrical conductor. And when you start to move up the metals, you start to realize, like, holy shit, the metals get really good at doing the things that the one before it could not do. But then there's things that the one before it can do, but the one that you're at right now, the metal after it, can't really do either. That's why you need to know all of them. And so lead is going through this process of becoming every metal. And again, this isn't every piece of lead on the planet, right? All lead is in different stages of evolution. But lead is becoming every single metal until it gets to gold. And in alchemy, we only talk about the 7 because it's easier for the mind to register these 7. But there's more than 7. I don't know if you ever heard of the idea that there's more than 7 chakras or more than 7 energy centers.
Yep.
So we have 3 outer planets too, right? So these metals are this lead, which then turns to tin. Tin is only becoming, iron and so on. But when you get to gold, we're not done, because then gold now introduces you into the platinum metal groups. And they have their own correspondences in general. And lead is now going through this journey. So it's no longer lead, right? It becomes gold, it becomes platinum, it keeps going until it becomes bismuth, which is the last stable metal in the periodic table of elements. Because after bismuth, metals become radioactive. Radioactive is like the idea of the sun, right? Energy is just exploding outward. And if you concentrate it, it's very dangerous. It'll rip through the fabric of space and time. It'll fuck shit up. Just think of what we did in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, right? That nuclear power looks like. A little bit concentrated and then just thrown at space and time just destroys everything, right? But eventually what happens is, so radiation is the death of the thing itself. So our sun is dying. It has been dying the moment that it was born. Does that make sense? It's the moment that it was formed. Sure. It's just releasing energy, just doing it. It's just letting go. Until one point, it's gonna go supernova, and it's gonna grow because it's just releasing all that it has left in it, and then it's gonna collapse, and it'll become a black hole, which is the side note. Black holes are just the polarity of a sun. They're the other end of the sun, right? You have the idea of light and dark, good and evil, male, female, positive, negative, polarity. black holes are the polarity of suns. So everywhere you have a sun, you have a black hole always. But back to the radiation, which is the journey of this little metal called lead. Radiation is the apex of energy. It cannot go anymore. It cannot go further. And it's the idea of plasma. It's so bright, right? It's so hot. It's like a plasma arc welder. You're just welding metals together with plasma. That's how fucking hot this thing is, right? So that's what radiation looks like. It's just at the apex of it. But radiation decays. And when radiation decays, a radioactive element, when it's decaying, actually becomes lead all over again. Like, science knows this.
Damn.
And it's fucking crazy. It's like,
the Ouroboros
and, you know,
of
there's so much more, and I'm still learning, right? But yeah. And this is us talking about the 7, and I don't even know where to begin when we talk about the other metals outside the 7. I don't have the words. I don't know the syntax, and science doesn't even have the words yet. You know what I mean? It's the unknown. It's the outer planets. Yeah. The 3 performers that went so far off the stage. We don't even know what that looks like.
Yeah. And like when you were just talking about all that, it just like sent me on some really interesting thoughts when you were talking about the 7 and them each individual, one of those interacting with the other 7, and thinking of all the substances present in the earth and what those could relate to. If you think of like 7 times the 6 metals before you hit gold, or 7 times if you're including gold, and you know, whether that be 42 or whatever intermediate things created out of those combinations. And then thinking about like the moons of those planets and how the moons of those planets,
my God,
might even you know, contemplate it, like how they might be corresponding to little bits of complementary matter in the earth, and how those things all dance with each other. That's fucking mind-blowing to think about.
This is what, dude, this is my life when I don't interact with humans. When I'm on standby, like when I'm like, you know, on when you just plug in your phone and you forget about it, I'm that phone. This is the kind of shit that goes on in my mind. And it's not even what I'm thinking about. It's just shit that comes to me. I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, Saturn, we're still discovering new moons on Saturn. What? That's crazy. Like, how many moons does this motherfucker have? We have 1 moon. And that thing is like a mouthful. We're still trying to figure things out, right? Oh my God. Yeah, no, it never ends. It never ends. So, it's just like even the chicken analogy, right? So you got salt, but then we have different types of salts. You have Himalayan pink salt, right? You have Celtic salt, you have black salt. It's like, oh shit. Okay. So I'm learning to be, this is like a culinary adventure through the universe, right? And like, yeah, but you have to start somewhere. So we're here on this little planet called Earth, just figure shit out. I just think it's funny because we want to go to the stars, right? We're going there. We want to go there. It's like, sweetie, we have to, there's complexities here. We need to figure this shit out first before we go out there. It's so intricate. It's and I mean, if Saturn affects us, then why wouldn't Saturn's moons and the moons of every planet in our solar system be affecting us too? So it would be more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, like the idea of your natal chart. Yeah. And the placement of the 7 the planets, including the moon, when you were born. Imagine like a meta, like a extra dimensional natal report that deals with where were the moon stationed on Saturn the moment that you were born, and how does that affect you?
How that ties into all these little subtle psychological proclivities or who knows what. That is
Yeah.
fascinating.
Because
So
they're
I've
all
got,
nuances.
yeah. So I've got a couple more questions for you. Because
Yeah.
I wanted to get into one thing I wanted to get into was some of your knowledge and experiences with like methods of detoxification and like the importance of detoxification and cleansing.
Yeah.
Especially like when it appears that, to be like a time of an emerging weaponization of synthetic biology and nanotechnologies and environmental mutations and all this. And one thing we were talking about the other day was clays, and you were talking about making clays and clays as a method of detoxification. So I was wondering if you can get into that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So the person that I was last working with was teaching me about these Egyptian techniques that the pharaohs were using with clays, right? During detoxes. And one thing that historians and scientists are starting to admit, or at least let us know about, is that the pharaohs in Egypt, they've looked through these tombs of these mummies, they've studied everything that's in them, and they've found cocaine, opium, coffee, like how the fuck did that, how, right? Like coca leaf comes from South America, it doesn't grow anywhere else in the world. How were they messing around with that? Well, the pharaohs were party animals, and sea trade was a big thing in unknown human history. But yeah, the pharaohs like to get down. They apparently like to party really fucking hard. But the pharaoh is also known as the human embodiment of God, right? Or the gods. So it's a conduit. So there has to be some sort of how do I explain this? You represent something like a god, right? You gotta look good. You gotta look good. You gotta be strong. You gotta be very, everlasting and so on. So how do you do that when you're a pharaoh and you're eating all the best food from all over the fucking world? You're doing cocaine, like you're fucking smoking opium, and you're doing all this shit. Like, how is it that you're maintaining an everlasting, healthy body with all that stuff going on? And basically, they had high priests and high priestesses that would develop detoxes that they would do on a scheduled basis. And that's something that I've been doing with my partner, Christine. She started doing it about a year ago too. And what I did was I took the original recipe that was taught to me of this clay mix detox cleanse, and I started to alter it. I started to add other things, mess around with the ratios and stuff, and realized that it can't be a specific recipe all the time. Your journey to detoxing, my journey to detoxing I've been in this house now like 3.5 years, and I started my detox regimen when I first moved here. And when I first moved here, I have been severely allergic to any type of shellfish since I was 14 years old. And I used to eat shellfish. I'm from Puerto Rico, and seafood is the thing. And at 14, all of a sudden, eating blue crab, I ended up in the emergency room. And it was not the first or last time that happened. So I've always stayed away from it. I mean, I couldn't even be in the kitchen where people were cooking seafood. I would start to have allergic reactions to it. So I started my cleanse. And basically, your gut is the foundation of your physical being in this world. And your gut is not human. Your gut is comprised of a shit ton of, no pun intended, a shit ton of different bacteria. And they eat what you eat, and what they expel actually feeds your body. It's very strange, but I accept it. It makes sense. It's like, cool, I'm relying on these alien bacteria in my tummy to feed me. So when I started learning through this, even with psychedelics too, I would like detox, do psychedelics, and I would have conversations with my body, my physical body, with my gut, with my bowels, right? And they were showing me, it's like, you don't eat for you. What you eat is actually for us. So when you put something in your mouth, stop thinking that you're feeding yourself. You're not. Yeah. You actually feed us. So it's like you're feeding a baby. You're feeding something else. It's like you feed your dog, your cat, you know? So when I eat food, I feed my bacteria. Based on what I eat will feed certain types of bacteria. And what those bacteria excrete is what my physical human body actually sustains itself from and nourishes itself from the excrement of these bacteria. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, wait a minute. So what happens when I eat pizza and donuts? It's like, you don't feed us. You feed something, but it's not us. Like, what? So what the fuck am I feeding? Because I'm still alive, right? It's like, well, yeah, because your human body, right? Oh my God, even though we said it, I mean, all love to everything, right? But it's like, oh man. And also this actually goes into the Solomon work. This is how fucking beautiful this is. It actually ties into fucking magic. And not just magic, but like biblical magic, right? Like the Bible talks about King Solomon and his demons who helped him build his fucking temple. And if you understand what a temple is a space, a sacred space that houses God, right? Well, what is your body? Your body is a temple. What are you? You are a God. And your body houses you because you can't be here in a physical form, but you can exist in a temple. So we have all these bacteria that are not ours. None of them, right? There's not a single bacteria in our gut that says sky DNA. Not at all. It's some other shit. But our gut bacteria is also being transferred to us by our mother and father, right? It's not just our mother through the umbilical cord and being in her womb. Your mother was interacting with your father. So they were exchanging bacteria before you were procreated, right? And you know the idea of like with shamanism, healing, ancestral shit. And part of that is in your fucking gut. And the other stuff is in your DNA and stuff, right? But it's in your gut. It's being passed down. So it's like, I have bacteria in my gut that has been in my bloodline for thousands of years. It's the same bacteria. It'll, we'll have variants because, the people from my land, they were interacting with bacteria from all over the world. Like the Vikings came to the island, the Portuguese, the French, the Spaniards, the Italians, and they brought their slaves. They brought slaves from the Mediterranean, from Africa, like all over the fucking place. So my gut bacteria is comprised of all the good stuff and all the shitty shit from like all over the fucking place. And you can consider these bacteria that are not our friends or that are not nourishing our body, you can consider them demons, right? A demon is something that does not follow the protocol of an authentic stasis. It wants to do what it does. And this is what parasites do. Unlike everything else in nature that works together, parasites are the only thing that don't work with nature. Don't get me wrong, there are animals that eat parasites, but that's rare, dude. And right, like tapeworms are not being selectively chosen as a meal by a species of animal. Not at all. parasites, what they do is just take. That's all they do. They don't give anything back. What they excrete causes things like autoimmune disorders, where your body starts to fucking attack itself. Because this parasite, what it does is that it manipulates its environment to be the environment that it is more successful in. A human body that is in stasis is not an ideal environment for a parasite or a demon. So the parasite or demon will coerce you, manipulate you into doing things to create and sustain an environment in which it finds stasis in. So they control they control your hormones, they control your biochemical environment, they control how you feel, they control what you think, they control your opinions, they control how you operate. It's pretty fucked up, actually. So that's just to give you a picture of like what's going on in our gut, right? So
Holy shit.
I'll pick up again on the King Solomon stuff, right?
Okay.
But just to give you some sort of ground with that. But clays. So clays are interesting because when you look at a clay under a microscope, imagine a three-dimensional shape, imagine a shape like a hexagram, right? Or a hexagon, but three-dimensional. But instead of solid, it is hollow inside. So interestingly enough, the size of the inside of the clay is actually the perfect size of these bacteria, not tapeworms, right? But the bacteria part, the microscopic stuff, they're the same size. The hollow space inside of the clay itself, the matrix, and the bacteria, the bad ones, they fit perfectly. The electrical discharge of these bacteria and parasites that are not beneficial to the human body is the polarity of the clay. So the clay, anything that's a pole attracts each other, right? So they get stuck in them, and then you flush it. Don't get me wrong, some good guys also get caught up in the process. So what I've been doing is, with psychedelics, my mind was able to receive a story that I could articulate and see. It's like, okay, there's a war in my fucking gut. Yeah, it's like a party, right? It's like you have a huge in Brooklyn, and you just open your doors to anybody to come fucking party. You got a DJ and fucking sound system and drugs everywhere. It's fucking great, right? But because you're not regulating who gets to come in, you're always gonna have random motherfuckers that come in that are like, somebody starts shooting up in your bathroom. Somebody starts smoking crack in your bedroom. Because I've had this shit happen, right? Like people in my living room smoking meth in the middle of my living room where everyone's dancing. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? It's like, yeah, you did not regulate what can come in. Back to Solomon's work, right? You did not set foundations of spells and restrictions and boundaries that says only this is allowed into my temple. I mean, we were babies, right? Our parents were giving us fucking Happy Meals when we were fucking 5 years old and shit. We're just feeding the other guys. So they just come in. So what the clay does is it just starts to kick everybody out. It doesn't even matter like who's good. It's not like an antibiotic, right? So it's not killing everything. But everybody's like, I don't know about you. I don't know if you were like smoking crack in my bathroom, and you gotta go. I'm not certain about you. You just gotta fucking go. So that's what the clay starts to do. And I would see this when I would be cleansing. It's been 3, 4, 5 days of fasting, no food, right? And I would start to have really dark really like thoughts that are not mine. I would start to get really annoyed, very aggressive, very, this is stupid. Why the fuck am I doing this? Like, I would hear these thoughts, like really aggressive, really intense thoughts that are not mine, but I used to think they were mine, which was like, this is stupid. I would find myself, dude, no joke, going to the supermarket and standing in front of the cases of donuts. And I'm looking, I'm like, wait, are you? And I'm laughing so loud in the supermarket because I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I don't even really remember leaving. Why did I leave my house? Why am I staring at donuts? Obsessed? What the fuck? Or if I'm, the person that I was dating, I would start to pick fights with them. That's a whole other thing where when the bacteria, these guys, these demons that are dying, their environment is no longer suitable for them. So they want to maintain, their livelihood. So they want to spread. And so, for example, randomly, you get into a fight with your partner. The fight is heated, right? It's hot. It's intense. And then sometimes what happens is you have makeup sex or angry sex. What the fuck is up with that? Why is it that I'm fighting this person who I love and care about and I have no beef with, but I'm fighting them and now I'm fucking them? Not even making love, right? It's like fucking them. Why is this happening? And with more psychedelic work and going in, it's like, oh, it's just because they want to spread. You're no good. Like and if they can be in another vessel and another person, they communicate with each other. So you share microbiomes with your dog, your cat, your house has its own microbiome that you interact with. Anybody that comes into your house, your temple, they leave something in that microbiome. Who you are intimately sleeping with, who you're making love with, who you're having sex with, who you make out with at the club, all this shit. Like I've made out with girls that I was like, I would never, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, there's these things interacting with each other. I was like, dude, I think I'm going fucking crazy. No one's gonna fucking believe me. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not about people. Fuck them. This is about you. You need to clean your shit out. I was like, dude, wait. And then I start to have memories of my life where I start to engage with people, with females in a way. I was like, I would have never done that. It's like, yeah, dude, you were not in control of yourself. You were in the control of something else. And yeah, it is parasitic. It is demonic. But people have a misconceived notion of what that means. And I'll tell you, Sky, no joke. Here in Taos, I was in a relationship with someone, right? For about a year. This person was in a different state when we started to connect. This is how powerful those things are. Those little demons. I'm cleansing. And I've noticed this too. When I would cleanse, females would start to show up. They start to talk. Oh, you're so smart. You're so handsome. You're so beautiful. You're like, oh my God, you're like so dark and I love it. Blah, blah, blah. It's just like feeding the things inside of me too. But it's good practice, right? Because you fall for that shit. If you can fall for it, there's something they need to course correct. We got into an intimate relationship. It was fucking crazy. It was like, I was under a spell the entire fucking time, dude. No joke. When I would leave to go to work, it was like I needed a couple mile different like separation from her. I would start to begin to have clarity. I was like, wait, what the fuck is this relationship? What the fuck am I doing? What the hell is going on? But as soon as I would come home on my drive home, I would still be thinking about these things. Like I would start to get assertive, like, no, I need to talk about this thing. I need to blah, blah, blah. And I would get home, I would just get caught up right back in the thing. And it was always just like sex, fuck it, right? All this shit. I'm like, oh, it's these things controlling my mind, controlling the operator, controlling my hormones, controlling how I feel. Dude, I was getting fights all the fucking time with her. And I shit you not, Sky, every single time that we have explosive fights, dude, where I would question, whoa, who the fuck am I? Like, where is this coming from? I don't have anger. What the fuck? And we would always have sex. And it would all just feel very, like a relief. But I would start to question, man, I don't actually feel relieved. What the fuck's going on? And I started to do the cleanse again, because I didn't do the cleanse for almost a year while I was with her. I didn't even think about it, dude. Actually, I didn't even do a single inkling of lab work throughout that whole year that I was here in Taos at all. I didn't do any lab work. I didn't do any of the shit that I would always do for myself to strengthen myself, to anchor and ground myself. You know what I mean? To just really better yourself, but like to evolve forward. I didn't do any of that stuff while I was with this person. And yeah, I came to realize that it wasn't even the person that I was with. Like, it wasn't even a real relationship. We didn't even know who the fuck we were at all. I realized that after a year. I was like, this has to end. And I kept trying to get out of the relationship. And I kept getting back into it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. How is it that I can actually say to the universe, I don't want to, like, I would come out into my yard and yell it, I don't want to do this anymore. I get back into it. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, yeah, dude. And it wasn't just the gut stuff. There was also spiritual demons as well. That's another conversation. But yeah. So ironically, somebody showed up with a book about the keys of Solomon. And it was someone that I didn't really know. And they said, hey, I got this book. I'm not into it, but I want to just give this to you. I was like, bro, I don't do magic, man. It's like, yeah, you do. Just take the book. Just take it. I'm like, hey, I don't care about Solomon. It's like, yeah, I know, but just, I don't need anything from it. Just take the fucking book. Leave it in your fucking closet, whatever. Just take the fucking book. You don't even have to read it. Just have the book. I was like, what? I don't even need to read it. It's like, no, dude, just take the fucking book. And that's it, dude. Never saw the person after that ever again. It's like, what? Like, okay. And when you read through these Solomon works, well, because of the experience with the gut and all that shit, it started to make sense. It's like, oh, some things you can kill, some things you can't, right? Like viruses, you can't kill a virus inside the human body, right? You can put the fucking AIDS virus in a petri dish with alcohol and it'll die, right? But you can't inject alcohol into your veins because you'll die, right? You can use bleach, ammonia, but you can't put that into the body. So that means that in the human body, you can't kill viruses. Not yet. But anyways, so what do you do then? Because viruses are the apex of demons because they're the biggest illusionists. You know why? They copy your RNA and your DNA and your own immune system doesn't know that it's even there. You just have to walk by and bump into it. And if you didn't kill it, it already knows you, right? Your DNA. And that's when I started to realize, like, dude, I'm going to put this Solomon stuff to the side real quick. I'm just going to clean my shit out. So I started working with this clay mix that I was taught, the recipe that I was taught, and I started to alter it. And it's not just the clay mix, but it's also how you approach the detox. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be doing this detox for the rest of my life, but I've been doing this detox for a couple of years now straight. So I do it every 2 to 3 months. Not planned. Like I don't schedule it. It just happens. I'll look at Christina and I go, I'm going to cleanse. And she says, I was thinking that. Yeah, I want to cleanse too. So you're killing levels of demons. It's like Dante's Inferno, the 9 layers of hell. It's like the 9 layers of fucking gut demons and body demons. It's like psycho-spiritual demons that are happening. And the last cleanse that I did, it was maybe like 6 months ago, maybe. I shit you not, guy. I almost died. literally almost died. It had been already 6 days of no food. I'm taking the clay. Then you take, you drink senna tea because you need to poop, but clay gets sticky and you don't want sticky clay sticking to your body when it's absorbed all these bacteria and things, because while they're dying, they're releasing toxins. I forget the term, but you go through this. So your liver and all your filters in your body are overloaded with the things that you're killing, right? So you go to like a toxic like syndrome where I started getting like feverish. I was in the kitchen with my dog and I was looking at him, and he was a very hyper dog. Like you couldn't lay on the floor without him like stepping on your fucking face and shit. But I looked at him, and Christine was working at that time, and I just slowly started falling to the floor, and I started getting these sharp pains in my armpits, really intense pain, and the pain started crawling up my jugulars, the arteries on each side of my neck. My jaw was like this intense pain, like stiff pain. And I just started like cringing, and my arms started to contract inward. So, your arteries come out of your heart, to your armpit, down to down your arm. It was all contracting. And my heart started beating really fucking fast. And I just fell on the floor. And my dog came up to me and he curled up next to me and put his head on my neck. And he like whimpered for a second. And he was breathing hard. And I was breathing hard. And I'm looking at him and I started crying. I'm like, dude, is this the big one? Like I did it? Like I'm dying right now. And I saw my hands, my arms, my legs. It was pale white, like gray, blue, white, purple blotches everywhere. I'm like, I'm having a heart attack right now, but I can't even move. I'm in so much pain. It wasn't a heart attack. It was like a cardiovascular arrest. My heart just slowed down and stopped, And I felt I put my fingers on my neck to check my pulse, and I wasn't registering anything for like 15 seconds. I was like, my breath was getting really shallow. I was getting really tired, and I'm just very sleepy. And my dog started to like nudge me in the face really hard. And I was like, wait, no, I gotta get up. And like I stood up. I just started like drinking a bunch of water, and my heart was just like doom, 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 doom. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I closed my eyes for a second. It was like, this is the last day of your cleanse. Stop going so hard. I was like, what? Like you can't kill everything all at once. Like it takes time. Right? Like you can't learn all the secrets of the universe all at the same time. It's a process. It's a journey, because you can overload with data and you can actually shut down completely. So it's like as within, so without. I was like, dude, my heart starts pumping and I can feel blood going through my veins, and my hands are starting to like get pink, and I can feel blood going through. It was the weirdest fucking thing. And I've had 2 heart attacks when I was younger off of drugs, and this is like the polarity of that, but still my heart. I was like, I just grabbed my dog, and he, again, crazy motherfucker. He was super calm. He just put his head on my shoulder, and I just grabbed him. I was like, dude, holy shit. But what was interesting is that while I was laying on the floor thinking, I did it this time, like this is the big one, I'm dying, I realized that that wasn't my own mind thinking that. It was something else.
Dude.
It was like I'm dying and you're gonna die too. I was like, what the fuck? It was like another voice, or it was like another, like a different mind connected somehow, plugged into my mind, using my thoughts or my mind to have a thought of like, I'm dying. That's okay. That's okay. I'm dying. I'm like, what? And then later that night, like I had already drank more poopsie, and I pooped, and what I saw in the toilet was, oh shit, like a slug, dude. I don't know, man, like an alien slug, and it was, I shit you not, Sky. The thing was like pulsating, like in a film of mucus. It was still moving. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this for a long time. And I got fuck this thing. And then that's when I started to get into the Solomon work and realizing like you can't kill everything. So what you could do is make certain things your bitch and make them work for you, or have these demons help you build your temple. That was it. And it's just working with the clay mix and realizing, like, you know, they say we were born into sin. We were born in a world of infection and bacteria and lies and deceit and manipulation and coherences, you know? It's like, yeah, you came into a world of infection to disinfect yourself. Like, what? Yeah, you came into a world of lies in order to find the truth. What? Like, yeah, you came into a world of filth in order to cleanse yourself. This is the baptism. You doing this actual work. Like, that's fucked up. Like, of course I did this to myself. I would do some shit like that. I would go into a game and do some shit because it's awesome. It's fucked up, but it's awesome. We're fucked up.
Mine is blown. Especially reflecting on the biblical things, the relation to the clay of the earth and our purification in relation to that, and the polarity aspect that you brought into it. And this brings like a whole new meaning and understanding of the notion of like the salt of the earth. Holy fuck. Like that survives the calcinations of the body, the temple in its purest state. And our friend, both of our friends, Sienna, she was actually dropping some of this on me at one point, and I want to mention her because she's kind of like a modern Maria the Jewess. People don't even know. But yeah, it's coming together. That's fucking amazingly fascinating, with like illuminating the notion of Solomon's temple and the mastery over the demons, and like thinking of like the God of the Bible, or Yahweh, or the Latin Yod He Shin Vav He, as kind of like the mother culture. Like, that's fucking epic. Damn, dude. Well, that's a note to end it on.
Yeah.
Well, fuck,
talking to you, dude. Seriously, it's a pleasure.
This was absolutely epic, man. Where would you direct people to find you?
To find me?
Yes.
Inside. No, yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's materia_artium_labs. And I mean, I'm on Facebook too as Materia Artium. But yeah, also on the website. I mean, everything that I do, I pretty much put it there for the most part. Still trying to figure out how do I offer the public this detox thing. I'm still not sure if I want to do it, because it's not just, you know, some shit that you drink and everything's better. It's a practice, it's a ritual, it's magic, it's a performance, right? It's a dedication, devotion, discipline, practice, right? Repetition. But yeah, for the most part, everything that I do is on the website, and most of my activity is on the internet on my Instagram account.
And every time I walk away from these conversations, it's like, whew. Well, expressing immense gratitude and appreciation for you coming and sharing this information. And yeah, man, thank you.
Yeah, anytime, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I love you so much, bro.
Hell yeah, you too, brother. All right, man. Until next time.
Hey, man. Take care. See you soon.